Here's a comment I receive on a regular basis from viewers of this channel and also people who contact me through my blog at retroactivejealousy.com. Zach, I'm struggling with retroactive jealousy because my partner had a lot of sex in their past, and today we don't have much of a sex life. What is the connection between retroactive jealousy and sexlessness? In today's video, I'm going to try to respond to that question. My name is Zachary Stockill, and since 2013, I've been helping men and women from all over the world overcome retroactive jealousy and save their relationships. If you'd like to work with me one-on-one, or you'd like more information about my work, please visit my website at retroactivejealousy.com. For those of you here for the first time, the term retroactive jealousy involves intrusive thoughts, often obsessive curiosity, and what I like to call mental movies about a partner's past relationships and or sexual history. You can suffer from all of those symptoms, or you can only suffer from one, and generally speaking, we still call that retroactive jealousy. And many retroactive jealousy sufferers are hung up on the fact that their partner had a lot of sex in their past, but today, things are a little less sexy, shall we say. They're having a less frequent sex life than they would prefer. So the number one thing I would say is, of course, I get it. I completely can imagine being in a relationship and being hurt or wounded or downright jealous or even angry that maybe your partner had, a very active sex life, either when she was single or he was single or in a past relationship. And today it feels like their attraction is lacking. It feels like their desire is lacking. I completely understand. I can imagine feeling that way. I haven't experienced this personally, but I can certainly put myself in someone else's shoes. I get how that would be really frustrating and hurtful. The number one thing I would say is remember that I think lives are made up of seasons. And, I don't say that to tell you, well, you just need to deal with it because this is a season of your partner's life where you're not going to have any sex. I'm not saying you should necessarily do that. But, desire can wax and wane over time, as we all know. As we get into our, advancing adult years, shall we say, there's more and more stresses. There's kids, there's mortgages, there's bills that need to be paid. Sometimes there's physical issues. So remember that maybe you're making your partner's lack of desire about you, and maybe to some extent it is, which we'll cover in a moment, but it probably isn't entirely about you. Don't make it all about you because it's almost certainly not. That said, it can also be good to reflect on what are you bringing to the table in terms of creating an environment that might increase your partner's arousal, that might increase your partner's desire, okay? Quite often I'll hear from men who bemoan the lack of sex in their lives with their wives, for example, and then I'll start getting into the nuts and bolts of the relationship. I'll start asking them more questions, and it turns out that, in many ways he's taking her for granted. He's being bitter and resentful. Maybe he's made a bunch of comments about her past that's kind of put her on the defensive. That's a very common thing. He's not exactly helping the situation. So in any relationship, it only takes one person to change the dynamic, as we all know. And I'm not eliminating your wife or your husband's or your boyfriend or girlfriend's responsibility in improving the frequency of your sex life, but take ownership for what you should take ownership for. Take a long, hard look at yourself and ask yourself, would I go to bed with me? I've mentioned this before. It's kind of a trippy thought experiment. But think about it. Try to put yourself in your partner's shoes. Reflect on the way you've been acting, the way you've been lashing out maybe, or just the way you've been kind of lazy, not putting a lot of effort in the relationship. And ask yourself, would I go to bed with me? If I was my partner, if I was any other member of the opposite sex or the same sex, as the case may be, if I was someone on the receiving end of my actions, would I want me? Now on to retroactive jealousy and the potential connection between retroactive jealousy and sexlessness. I've been doing this work again for a long, long time, thousands of emails, hundreds and hundreds, probably, it might be getting over 1,000 coaching calls at this point. In fact, it definitely is. Point is, I've been doing this for a long time. I've never heard anyone tell me, or I've never read an email or anything from a retroactive jealousy sufferer who says that sexlessness was the main cause of their retroactive jealousy. Maybe a couple if I really think of it, but it's been very rare. So I think sexlessness, or what some people call a dead bedroom, can sometimes inspire or embolden retroactive jealousy, but I think it's not usually the main cause. The causes of retroactive jealousy is a very deep rabbit hole. That's a very big topic. I've made some videos about that on my channel in other places. But to cut a long story short, this can involve childhood conditioning. This can involve social influences growing up. This can involve OCD in certain cases, perhaps. This can involve anxiety. depression. There's many potential causes for retroactive jealousy. And I don't think sexlessness or a dead bedroom on its own is the only contributing factor. But of course, as I mentioned at the top of this video, I can completely understand how sexlessness or a dead bedroom might increase feelings of retroactive jealousy and be very painful to deal with. So above all, remember that life is made up of seasons. Maybe your partner is in a particularly challenging or stressful period of life, and maybe her sexlessness, or shall we say her lack of desire, has very little to do with you, right? Another thing, though, that I have to mention this, and some of you are going to not like this, but again, I owe it to you to be totally honest. One thing I encounter frequently, it always astounds me, is men who, in particular men, I have to say, men who marry a woman, several years in the relationship, or sometimes even shorter, they're bemoaning the sexlessness of their relationship. They're saying they have basically a dead bedroom. We haven't had sex in 6 months. It seems like she never wants it. Seems like it's not a really important thing for her, yada, yada. And then in certain situations, I have gotten into this on coaching calls and so on. And I've asked them questions. Well, what was your wife like when you were dating? What was your initial impressions of her and her sex drive? And were you guys ever compatible in that sense? And frequently, the answer is no. The story goes something like, we met, it took ages to go to bed together. It seemed like even when we were dating, she didn't want it that much. She promised that she'd work on it. She'd promised that it wasn't always going to be this way. She promised that once life settles down or whatever, things would get better. But to be honest, we've never really clicked sexually. We've never really had that connection. Now, your relationship is your relationship. It's none of my business. You're a free individual who can make whatever choices you want. But if you're someone who values an active, healthy, dynamic sex life, you should find someone who also values a healthy, dynamic, active sex life. And not everyone does. And no judgment on those people. That's 1000% okay. If they're happy and flourishing, I'm happy for them. But the point is, don't enter into a relationship, and certainly don't enter into a marriage with someone where sex is very important to you and it seems to not be important to your partner. So, they say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. This is one of those cases. If you find early on in the dating phase that your partner doesn't share the same sex drive, isn't interested in sex to the extent that you are, and that's consistent over a long period of time and things aren't getting better, I would be extremely wary about moving forward with her. There's a divorce lawyer who I really like. His name is James Sexton. He wrote a very good book, which I highly recommend. It's called If You're in My Office, It's Too Late. And one of the things he talks about in his book, and based on his experience as a divorce lawyer, is the fact that so many marriages break up because of money and because of sex. So to avoid this, make sure you're clear on your values in terms of your financial lives early on, and make sure you are on the same page as to the role that your sex life is going to play in your marriage. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. If you benefited from this video, please take a moment to click the like button below, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. I hate saying this, but the YouTube algorithm gods apparently like that stuff. So please, if you engage with my content, you appreciate my content, please do something to engage with it. Click like, subscribe, all that stuff. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you again very soon.